Right. Let's recall in terms of what we discussed in the first learning outcome when we started this unit. The main reason of obviously studying this unit is to understand how technology is shaping up, the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry, how the advancements in technology are actually helping it to, transform, making it more effective, more productive, and, obviously, something which consumers like is that they get plenty of options to do things in real-time basis. And then there are some issues that we looked at, which could be contemporary issues or ongoing issues or modern issues, which are also coming up, with the use of technologies that information can be transmitted pretty much, instantly through Facebook, social media. There is, to a certain extent, threat to tourism from terrorism in certain countries, and all those things will be elaborated in one of the other units that we study, which is called destination management. Now, the first learning outcome in terms of the details, we looked at basically things like, how technology has come in, what kind of technology and systems have come into the sector, and how this has done away with some of the traditional paper-based things that we were doing, like booking, check-ins, for example, booking of our holidays with travel agents, tour operators. All that has got transformed and has become electronic. And one of the things that we will also study in this learning outcome in particular would be the rise of what is called the OTAs, online travel agents, or online travel agencies, which are run as, companies which allow us to book, destinations, tourism, for example, anything related to tourism activity or, travel. So it will nicely get into, get us into the second learning outcome, which is looking at how do we look at the use of management information systems across the sector. So here, the second learning outcome will primarily focus on, if I just very briefly bring out a slide, which focused on the types of systems, the different types which we use. This one in particular, this slide, technology used in the hospitality sector. Now, there are lots of different systems. They play a very crucial role in the overall, operations of the, say, for example, the hotel, which I call it an ecosystem because there are lots of functioning departments, types of services being provided to customer. But what we're going to focus on in learning outcome 2 will be one particular type of system, and that will be something called the information system. And the reason why we say it is management information system is that when you look at, we look at lots of data being produced, from various inputs of, let's put it this way. How is data produced? When you collect a lot of pieces of information. So a lot of pieces of information which could be where the customer is dining, what the customer is paying, where the customer is hotel, what are the things that they're using in the minibar. All this individually is basically data. But when we put this together into some sort of a report or some sort of, say, a meaningful output, which the management or somebody who's responsible for that department is able to take a decision on, will be essentially something they will use, which will be called a management information system. Because information which is put out by customers, gathered by different people within the industry, in different departments, you check in. So the front end desk is collecting some information about check-in. You go to a restaurant, the chef, the waiter, the bartender is collecting some information in terms of your orders. But all this is collated together when the guest actually checks in or checks out. And how this collation information technically tends to happen is that all of this individual bits of information and data which is collected by doing different activities is actually fed into a system, and that system then kind of does a bit of processing the way it's been configured, and that allows the person at the front desk or a manager, supervisor to be able to take a decision, and that is where the involvement of the system then comes and becomes important, which is called management information system. So in short, in the learning outcome 2, we are going to be studying the range of systems which are used primarily to process information, and they will be termed as what is called the information management information systems. And then we will also study something called global distribution systems, or GDS, as a term which is now come to be known in the industry. And then the third term that we're going to be looking at is, because of the connectivity and the availability of internet, what we do see is that the role of online travel agencies, the role of online marketing has has become quite important within this sector. So there are thousands and thousands and millions of websites. There are loads of offers, and it is important to be found. And that itself poses a bit of a challenge to this industry when they look at, the concept of how discoverability can happen. So we look into some of the marketing techniques which basically revolve around, meta search, SEO, and how that particular side of the function marries in very well with the deployment of management information systems within this particular sector. So let's start off by understanding a few key terms and terminology. So from my point of view, what I want to be able to look at is look at some of the clear bits in terms of what is an MIS. So it is a combination of two words, management, information, and to a certain extent three words, management, information, and systems. But when you bring all of them together, what it broadly refers to is some sort of a system, which is a digital system or an IT system, and that system is allowing you to store information, retrieve information, and also process information in the form of reports, which allows you to take decisions. As a manager or as a person, when you're working at a particular department, in a particular job role, it allows you to take a decision. So in a nutshell, MIS is a collection of system, which is a combination of hardware people who use it to be able to produce, store, and retrieve information about the organization. Now, it's important for us to understand what is the difference between an MIS and an IT system. So sometimes when we say, okay, I have an IT system in my bed and breakfast. Now that IT system might not have the same connotation as a management information system because that system does not have the capability to produce or manipulate, or when I say manipulate, in order to produce a meaningful set of report or information. So an IT system could be, you have an EPBX in the hotel, which is a standalone IT system. When you talk about, say, for example, the entertainment system in the rooms that you access, that is an IT system. Because standalone, that system tends to be, consisting of offerings or products, or how it is made up of is, it is made up of some sort of technology which delivers some sort of information to the consumer as and when they want. But when we look at MIS, it refers to a larger term and it encompasses IT. So an MIS could be a number of IT systems all linking up into one. So it's like a control room, let's put it this way, or if you imagine a captain's cockpit. In that cockpit, he's able to get all the information coming across from the cabin, from outside, from the air traffic control, and he's able to see that all in one dashboard. So similarly, if I look at management information system, all the small IT systems like a CCTV system, you look at the entertainment system, you look at billing system, you look at customer checking system, booking software, all those systems will actually be a part of a larger system called MIS. And that is where this tends to be a larger operation. When we say we are looking at deploying a system within the hotel, sometimes it starts off with small systems, things like the door locks, which is the RFID system. Now when at some stage when the hotel has a lot of different systems, and the output of all those systems can be monitored in a single place or by some sort of a single source, that is what I would call a management information system, because everything is feeding into that for us to be able to derive meaningful information. Okay? Now let's look at why do we think MIS systems are becoming important for this sector. If I look at, going back to the introduction, and I mentioned in the first learning outcome that this is the fastest growing industry in the world. It employs the largest number of people in the world. And just to give you some statistics, the reason is that it gives us a bit of a perspective in terms of how much and how quickly this particular ecosystem of travel, tourism, and hospitality sector is growing. If I look at just one example of a developing country like India, for example, now the World Travel and Tourism Council is predicting that a country like India, which is a developing country, which has a lot of rich cultural heritage, is growing annually at about 10% in terms of the tourism activity alone. So if you see in the last few years, America has been the #1 tourist destination in the world. Some 78 million visitors actually go to America every year, and this is the #1 tourist destination. But if you look at it in the last 2-3 years, what has happened is Spain has overtaken America and has become the #1 destination. So about 80 million odd tourists go to Spain, and predominantly because of the availability of cheap flights, travel becoming more economical, destinations within Europe are becoming much more sought after. So there's a lot of growth happening because of the economic, mobility which is happening, and also because of, connectivity which is now able to facilitate, cheaper prices, offers, discounts, and all those things across in this particular sector. Now, apart from this, if you look at the number of, sticking to the example of India, just in case, what we look at is if there is a growth of 10%, there are 25 million tourists which will visit or have visited India in 2015. And that number is expected to go to 39 million by 2020. So if you see, that growth is disproportionate, and in order for the country to sustain that tourism infrastructure, they need more hotels, they need more rooms, and also this would mean that an influx of IT-related systems will go into, because when you look at a hotel, we look at it from a point of view that we are booking a Hilton, we are booking a Marriott, we are booking, say, for example, a particular room in a chain of hotel. But if you look at the system which goes behind all that, who manages, is something which is MIS, because you're not just going to be booking in a room, but you're also going to be booking in services like restaurants, spa, swimming pool, gym, whatever it is, and the hotel has to cater for all those. So in order to do that, what we get to see is that at some stage, it is difficult for this operation to be managed without the availability of some sort of a information system. Now, if I go back to the success factors of why some of the hotel chains are much more successful than others, because they have loyalty programs, they have a loyalty card, they also have things which allow them to retrieve information quite successfully. Sometimes you will see when this kind of a thing is to work, most management related people would look at 3 types of information and how they are processed into the system. So at some stage, if a hotel is looking at expanding into a developing market like India, China, Indonesia, and some of the other markets like Philippines, they would look at putting some strategy in place that this is a place that we need to invest. At some stage, they will need to put an infrastructure, and that infrastructure could be physical infrastructure like the building of the hotels, hiring our local resources, and then the business also needs to understand culture. Now, until unless the marrying of these 3 factors happen, there is no way that the business is going to be successful in that part of the world. And in order to marry all this, there is some sort of an information system which is required, which basically incorporates a lot of local research. Also looks at, once the infrastructure is ready, is able to then give out information. And last but not the least, it is working through a particular strategy which allows, the management to take decisions. So at some stage, what they do is they look at shortlisting a location to find out whether this is a place that the hotel needs to expand, the chain needs to build a hotel, there is activity happening about tourism. They will be able to understand the culture, hire local people. At some stage, that feeds into the structure. They start looking at acquiring a property, building a property, looking at relevant permissions from the government or the local bodies to be able to establish a business, and that starts the process of communication. At that stage, we see the development of some sort of information system happening within the, within the company. And I'll give you a simple example here. You decide to take a holiday. It is only a thought process at this moment when you decide that, okay, this year we'll go to take a holiday and, we'll go to this destination. But the moment you start doing a bit of search about it, that means you start looking at websites, you start looking at ticketing prices, hotels. That is where the structure starts to come in, wherein you have now become serious from the awareness. You've gone into taking an action, and that action is now looking at finding out places to go, prices, ticket costs, and things like that. And at some stage, when you firm up all this, what you've done is, okay, we made a strategy, we're going to be staying here, we're going to spend this much money, we're going to go out in these locations, do this, do those activities, and that is where your, holiday comes into some sort of fruition. Similarly, if you imagine a hotel, and when we look at some of these things, what we do is we see is that if these 3 things are in operation, at some stage, the management starts to look at deploying some sort of information systems in which allows them to then take out outputs or reports from a point of view of making decisions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, let's look at a few things in terms of understanding, how we look at managing or looking at evaluating the effectiveness of the information systems within a particular sector, or say hotel, resort, whatever it is. Now, if I have to recollect from what we looked at, some of the key departments within a hotel would be food and beverage. You look at front office, back office. You look at housekeeping, security, maintenance, and obviously financial side of things. These are, without a doubt, some of the key departments within a hotel or a resort, isn't it? When you check out, you need a billing software. You check in, they take an impression of the card because of the fact they want to know that you're able to pay for the services that you're going to be looking at utilizing. At some stage, they expect that if you're running a large operation, the air conditions are working, the minibar is working, the beds and other bits and pieces of equipment are working. There's a maintenance department to take care of all that, and then obviously all those things, they tie into some sort of some sort of a strategy which allows it to work as as an organization to be able to deliver the services which the customer is paying for. If I look at, say, a particular picture of, how do we define, say, a management information system and the types which are deployed within the organization, you will see that at the operational level, we call these systems as called TPS. TPS means transaction processing systems, and they tend to be looking at taking in a lot of information and giving out a lot of different types of reports. So when you check in, you check out, there's a system which is working, and that system might be classified as a TPS system. Now, in the background, when you have checked in, say for example, you also swipe your loyalty card. The loyalty card will calculate your points, will also be able to give the attendant or the person who's at the front desk a clear information in terms of how many times you stay in the hotel, which all different chains in which you stay or cities in which you use the system, and how many points you've accumulated. That will be some sort of a tiered structure. You got a bronze, silver or a gold member, things like that. Some sort of a tiered structure which will also be there. Now, once this initial scanning has been done, what you will see is at some stage after the initial scanning has been done, the loyalty card will also throw up information which will be based on previous transactions. And that is where, when it is able to pull together your previous stays and your previous, spend within a particular property, or, for example, if I've traveled to Amsterdam, I've stayed at the Hilton. I've also traveled to, say, Frankfurt, I've stayed at Hilton. But my spend at Amsterdam, because I stayed only for a day, was, say, 200 euros. But when I stayed at Frankfurt, it was 1,000 euros. And I went to, say, some other place in the US, and I stayed, and, in San Francisco, my spend was about $1,500. So what it is showing that my spend across the hotels when I'm staying is actually growing. Depending on the city, depending on the duration of the trip, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 7 days, the trips are basically dictating, the amount of spend I'm doing. Now that being collated and made available at some stage is being done through what is called the Knowledge Information System, or KWS. Now at some stage, if the management is to look at, taking out or extracting a bit more information, and say, for example, when I say management here, I would say marketing, which is looking at sending across some discount coupons or offers because they see this traveler stays on average, makes about 20-25 trips and stays about, in 3 or 4 cities. So what the marketing department would be looking at doing would be to send across coupons, offers, discounts, or vouchers to the person to be able to utilize and bring him for stay again, and maybe elongate his stay or maybe ask him to spend more within the property. So in this case, that system, which is going to be looking at processing the information which has happened, in the operational systems, and then when they have some part of the knowledge, it will go into something which they want to predict and say that, okay, this is the place where the customer could travel next. This is the place where the customer could actually spend a bit more if we give a bit of discount. And that is where the management level information system will be looking at making its mark, because it is sending across offers, discount coupons, some sort of, like we have a bank holiday Monday coming up. I have offers coming in from JW Marriott to say, if you haven't booked your vacation up until now, last minute thing, and we have so many rooms, so many properties available across so many destinations, and you can travel. Now, why this is happening? Because I'm a gold card member which is able to Marriott, and they see that I travel during the month of July, August, September, minimum one or two trips happen, and because of the vacation, and if they haven't seen a booking happening at that point in time, that has triggered automatically some sort of a flow or some sort of a flow chart that they made. If this customer has not booked the property within this time, there should be an offer which goes. And I've received another email which has come after 7 days saying, last minute if you haven't booked, you could look at these properties wherein rooms are available. So all this is happening primarily because of the management information system. Because the transactions which I've done in the past have been now converted into some sort of meaningful outputs or reports. My loyalty card is flashing up some data, and that data is being utilized by the marketing department, the sales department, to send across offers to me, which they feel will help me in pushing to make a decision to come in and stay or book a vacation and use the property and bring in revenue. Now, at the top end, you will generally see there is a system which sits, which is called the executive support system. Now, years and years of data. Why do you think hotels would utilize or collect a lot of data? Why do you think they ask you to sign up for a loyalty program? And why do you think they ask you to participate in surveys or feedbacks when you're checking out at the hotel? Can you think of a few reasons why they ask you that?
For long-term purposes, so they can forecast. How do I say?
That's correct. So long-term purposes, forecast, yes.
Maybe so they can forecast how they can market to their customers.
Absolutely. So, absolutely, using that data or the data that they've been able to collect. So here, what we're looking at is that there are two things. Let's look at an example. The example that I would bring here is that at some stage, when we look at classification of target audience, because of demographics, psychographics, your attitudinal, behavioral, 4 different metrics that we can use. At some stage, say for example, you have stayed at the hotel for the first time. They ask you questions like, your first name, last name, your email, phone. So they're collecting some bit of information. But then they go on to certain set of questions wherein they ask you, what is your income level? How many times you travel? How many kids you have? So they're getting into some data which they want to understand and put you into some sort of a classification. And that classification would be demographic, where you're coming from, how many times you take a holiday, do you travel with family, how many times you go on a business trip, which properties do you use, which cities do you travel. Now, this type of a questionnaire or a survey is done predominantly served through the internet or from an email. But when the idea of collecting this data there is that at some stage they want to put you into some sort of a target audience or a classification, say this particular tourist is between the age of 25 to 35, unmarried or bachelor, has an income level within this, and has a frequency of travel across the year so many times. Now that data allows the hotel chain to basically look at channelizing offers which are going to be related to you. So if there are properties of JW Marriott in Ibiza, in Mallorca, or in destinations which, as a young person, you generally, what they're trying to do is they're trying to know your lifestyle, they're trying to know your income level, they want to know where you come from, what your background, and what are your interests and hobbies. So depending on that, if there are properties in that, which meet that criteria, they're going to be more, looking at sending you offers for those areas where they feel this kind of an audience at this age group with this kind of a lifestyle actually looks at traveling in this destination. Now, this data which is being collected over the years, it might be one survey, 2 survey. Every time you stay in a hotel, they send you out a survey, you fill it up, and this data is being tabulated, continuously refined, and also being used for decision making. At some stage, when they have good amount of data for you, this data then is used and looked at, for doing forward planning. So sometimes they will then start offering you things like, would you like to have an annual membership, which will give you a share option in a particular destination with, say, for example, a hotel. Because they do feel that you have the income level to be able to pay, say, £1,000 a year and maybe use a destination of room sharing or booking within a hotel, which is currently happening for a lot of properties, say, in Hilton hotels, in Marriott, in a lot of different types of chains. Because they're struggling, to fill properties in excess capacity in certain destinations which used to be very popular and famous, but they have started to decline in terms of their demand in the market. Now, these kind of decisions are done primarily using some sort of very high-level system and information which will be available within, available for a customer with a particular hotel chain, and they will be classed as something called the executive support systems. There will also be systems or information which will, there will be these kind of systems which will get information coming across from research which the company buys, looking at the trends of, travel and tourism for the next 5 years. So they might buy this report from, say, Pyramid or IDC Corporation or Gartner, for example, to find out how is the destination, how is the city, or how is the tourism activity going to shape up in 5 years, 10 years. And based on that, the chief executive, the management of the organization would look at feeding that data into the system to be able to take meaningful decisions. And these decisions are then aided with the use of something called ESS or executive support systems.
Yeah.
And an example, a case in point that I would say here is that if I work at the front desk, I won't know what the accounts of the hotel is or the annual turnover of the hotel is, what revenue, what is the profitability. Because that information is sensitive and it is filtered onto a particular tier. The management will have that access to the information. So when they look at taking a long-term decision that, okay, if you look at a destination like Las Vegas, when they build hotels there, they build them for about 20 years. And every 20 years, they demolish the properties and create new properties. Because they have calculated that the return on investment of this hotel will come out in 10 years. You look at the likes of Bellagio, Caesar's Palace, and some of the large properties which are Venetian, for example. You look at Wynn Hotel there. They have in excess of 5,000 rooms. And in 10 years' time, they build those hotels with an investment of $1, $2, $3 billion. And in about 10 years' time frame, the whole investment of the hotel comes out. The properties get run down, they become worn out, and they have to demolish them and create new properties, which creates the buzz about, what things are being invested in and brought in, and the new properties. Right. So those kind of decisions in terms of return on investment, profitability, when we break even, will typically happen with the executive support system because they have a lot of data about customers, number of customers checking in, traveling, things like that. Now let's look at having understood, the requirements, what the systems provide, what are the different types. Let's look at briefly some of the things which these systems actually help in doing. So what is the main purpose of having a system in place? What is the main function? What do you think the main purpose of having a system in place? Just any system, for example.
The management information system.
Yes.
I would say we'd have it for, as you said before, organizing our data, storing data, basically organizing it. I would say organizing it.
Right. So when you look at, these are the four main reasons of having a system in place. You look at, if I look at a personal example, you look at your own house, you sometimes put system in place with your kids and children. Say, okay, you're in holiday now. Okay, so we're going to create a plan. That plan is going to be, you'll go out biking every day, you'll do a bit of Xbox, you'll have your breakfast, you'll do a bit of homework, and a bit of reading, and then you'll attend, say, some classes on judo, karate, or football, or whatever it is. The idea of doing that or planning it out is that you want to develop some sort of a system or put a system in place for it to work for the next 4 to 6 weeks during summer vacation. Now, if I bring this out as a terminology and, as an example and put it to an organization, you have certain systems in place, things like office opening hours. You look at certain activities which the jobs and, employees do in terms of jobs and responsibilities. You have certain things that you require at some point in time, things like a telephone, a printer, a copier. And the reason of having these various types of systems in place is that you want to do your work more effectively. You want it to be planned. You want it to be organized. You want it to, at some stage, if you're the manager, you're also looking at monitoring and controlling it. You're looking at directing it. You want people to be able to give you the output that is required for the work to be done, for the goal to be achieved. So all these systems pretty much fall into the same domain in terms of what they help you to do. which is they help you to plan better, they help you to organize different resources and different activities that you want to do. They help in directing, and directing when I say is policies, procedures will be available in these systems, which means that if this is to go wrong or this is to happen, this is the policy that you need to look at, and that will help in quickly resolving some of the problems. And then to a certain extent, for you to be able to monitor and control remotely. If you're the general manager of the hotel and you want to keep a tab on all the activities happening on a particular day, you're looking at getting hold of some reports from the front office, from the food and beverage department, from housekeeping, from back office, whatever. And all these reports are coming in the form of either email, some sort of an output, and that helps you to control the operations of the particular.
Right.
So management.
Could I say, for example, the software that we have at our restaurant that we use to take orders, it has all the pricing, and we make receipts, and then at the end of the day, we can print out a report, so we can do our check the cash register to make sure everything's okay. You could say that's an example of a management information system.
Absolutely, that is a billing system which falls into the category of management information, because it allows you to do from order taking to reconciliation of your accounts in terms of what cash or the sales have happened at the end of the day, and that is a system. And that does end-to-end, start-to-finish kind of a process or function, and that will be classified as something called management information system. So in the olden days, you used to cash out the tills, match out how many sales, what is happening. It used to take about half an hour to match and cash out the tills. But today, because of the electronic invoicing or billing available, and the data is all available through the system when you take the orders to when you take the payment from the customer, it's all integrated, and that system which is allowing you to get the information at a click of a button is nothing but a management information system.
And that information from, let's say, the one restaurant, and then one information from the other bar, and from the other restaurant, let's say, all goes into a centralized system.
Yes. And that is something which is feeding into another system which somebody has access to, and that person is able to get a bird's eye view of different types of information being processed in different departments, and he or she is able to get an integrated view. So those are things that you get to see when you look at say, for example, a management system in work. Now let's look at a system that we come across on a daily basis, websites. Now these are also maintained by some sort of a system in the background. There is let's put it this way, some sort of a content management system where you can update data in real time. You get data from customers when they're browsing the website in real time. And these are examples of, management information systems that we touch, see, feel, and use on a day in, day out basis. If you're going out to eat in a restaurant, first thing you do is you look at the website, you look at the directions, you look at the reviews, you look at the menu, and this is an example of a static information system which is giving out one-way information to you when you look at reading through the website. If there are things which are built into the website which are allowing you to interact, say for example, look at finding a booking or making a booking, then that system becomes more than just a static management information system in terms of just giving you information, but it is also allowing you to book and look at interacting with the information which is available. So in some part of it, if I look at website, which is just for processing data and providing you information, is an example of TPS, transaction processing system. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now this can also be considered if I go and shop on Amazon, for example, or on eBay, wherein you select a product, add it to a basket, check out, make the payment, and you get a confirmation of your order. And that is also a good example of something called the transaction processing system, TPS. Okay. Now let's look at room allotment system. Now this is a bit more complex because here you cannot have double booking. It needs to have something called a what if then analysis. That means if this room, imagine yourself, you're trying to book a room in Greece. And at the same point in time on the website, there are 20 customers trying to book a room. Now, when sometimes you shortlist, add it to your basket, it says you have 10 minutes now to complete the transaction. So for 10 minutes, the system is holding the other customers, if that's the only room available, in a queue. And that time is running on the clock for you to be able to complete the transaction. If the transaction is completed, that would mean that you have booked the room, and then in that case, the other customers will get a message which will say this room or property is now sold out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when we look at that kind of a system, we look at some sort of systems in restaurant as you were explaining, which allows you to look at say for example different menus, look at different types of dishes that you can order, and then at some stage allows you to also look at reporting. In terms of towards the end of the day when you do a bit of reporting to say I need to order this inventory. So it is combination of helping you to track inventory as well. Has the milk run out? Has the coffee run out? Has this run out? Has it fallen below a particular level which you define?
Yes.
It helps you to find out how many orders were placed, what type of dishes were liked the most, or what was the most popular order of the day, what was the biggest order value, how much money, stock. So if you look at all this, which system in a way is allowing you to track your inventory like ingredients, it is also allowing you to track total invoices, your details about suppliers and products, your recipes, what is your stock, and then what kind of dishes you're adding. All of that allows you to look at something called, information in one particular source. Now, a simple form of system that we look at would be, say, point of sale system, something which you have as a till. And that till would be allowing you to keep track of inventory, giving you a receipt, maybe taking up the cash, doing a transaction from the credit card. But that is also some sort of a system. And this also will be classified as something called TPS. Okay,
right.
Just give you different examples for you to understand what the systems are. Now, sometimes you are in the restaurant, you don't need to go up to the counter to pay the money, and most restaurants really use what is called the wireless POS, so that you can make payments with the credit card, and that is also an example of a system. And in the background, you have a dashboard which allows you to see how many sales, what item, whether they are paying by cash, and this is the back end of the, say, wireless POS or a credit card machine. Now, going back to where we started initially, when we talked about management information system and the types which are used in different departments, let's look at different types now. Now, we discussed that these systems allow you to generate reports. What kind of reports? One such example will be a report which a manager would want to generate on a daily basis to see what are the total number of rooms which are available, sold, utilized, and what is the revenue which is coming in. This is one sort of customized report which the booking system would generate, if should a manager or somebody at the front desk wants to see this report.
Right.
Now, when we look at this kind of a report, we are going into now from TPS to something called property management system, because we are more concerned about rooming, bookings, cancellations, revenue being brought in, what rooms in the property are available, and what can be sold out or on which the offers can be actually given. So this kind of a system will actually be generating a report from something called the PMS, Property Management System.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes. Now,
it has various functions, and we've discussed them briefly, things like checking in, reservations, checkout, automatic payments, because if they've swiped a card and the facilities have been used, it'll automatically tally all those transactions in. It'll also help you track say future sales, do some bit of prediction or forecasting, and at some stage this system will also be interfacing with some other systems in the department or in the hotel. So one such system could be when you wine and dine at a restaurant, when you've used some of the facilities in the business center or in the front office, say to take out printouts, you would have used the business center to send out emails or make some calls from the telephone in your room. And to a certain extent also go into things like room service, look at in dining at the restaurant and using some of the other facilities which are in the property, and that would all be feeding into what is called the PMS, so that when you check out at the hotel, all this data and information is available so that the right amount of payments could be taken from the customer. Okay?
So could we say that this is like the centralized management system for data?
Right.
If a manager wants to see what he wants to profit or what needs to be covered, let's say, what's been sold, what inventory needs purchasing and all the rooms and all that. This would be the stage where he would look at in order to make a decision.
Absolutely correct. So if you see the essential functions of the front desk when you're checking out, the person at the checkout will always give a call to all the departments to find out if all the bills have been put in or processed into the system. So this system pulls information from all the other departments, all the others, because you have only one opportunity with the customer to be able to take that payment when the customer is checking out. So whether it's catering, restaurant, facilities, front office, back office, business center, anything which would have been used by the customer, even if they've not used, the front desk will still make a call to find out if all the things have been put in. Like, for example, laundry. In most cases, minibar, for example. In terms of entertainment, if you bought any movies or watched any serials and things like that, when you are in the room, have you taken a room service? All this is going to be pulled into a central information system, which we call it as PMS, or Property Information Management System. And at the time of checkout, customers' details will have to be up to date in order for that to work and get the right amount of money which is due for the services the customer has used. So this is an example of, say, taking a room service order from the customer, food and beverage, food production. It goes to food and beverage. You ordered a wine, but you ordered some other things which have come in. Then at some stage, housekeeping falls into place. The trolley with cutlery and other things which goes, somebody from the housekeeping department will actually go and deliver the order. At some stage, in the background, chef is making the food. And then once the order has been served, you put the trolley out of the room. There's somebody from housekeeping again will go in and, take that away and make sure that everything has come back. And that is an example of how this particular system would work within a hotel or a property.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now let's look at decision support systems. So we're going by that particular matrix and what we spoke about. Now, when do you think you need to make decisions? Who takes the decisions, say, in a restaurant? Who's the final decision maker in the restaurant?
There's the Met, but then there's also an F&B manager.
That is correct.
Decisions on behalf of, for all the food and beverage departments.
That is correct. So essentially, if I look at F&B manager, just the word manager, that manager would need to have all the information accurately provided for him or her to take a decision in case if there is a problem. So in those cases, they will depend on some sort of a system which will allow them to take very accurate decisions. And that would mean that they will use some sort of a system which pulls in all the information from all the other places. And this is what is going to be called something called the decision support system, which is basically, you remember in the last session you mentioned to me that even if the customer has ordered and paid for it, you still collect the receipts, get the signatures, because in this system, you will have all the evidence being documented, which will primarily be, used to verify that this actually has happened or this actually has been done. So things like communication, if there's an email, if there's a phone call which has been made to order room service, that phone call is recorded. At some stage, when you sign the receipt along with the order which has been delivered to your room, you're signing a document to say that I've accepted the delivery. At some stage, that goes back into the system and then is inputted. And then when you check out at the front desk, then allows you to create a paper trail of from the order to the phone to the delivery to the sign out to the signing in on the order, and then when you check out, you're making the payment. And that decision system, would be something which the customers would rely on, or the managers would rely on in case if they face any issues from customers.
Right.
Now there are, with the modern usage, there are systems called customer relationship CRM systems also coming in, management. Now CRM systems are generally used by the marketing sales department, because here they are looking at using this system to send out offers, send out discounts, send out information to their existing customers, and in order to manage or maximize revenues. So this kind of a system which is now deployed within the marketing and sales department within most of the different types of the outlets within the tourism and hospitality sector. When we look at events, hotels, meeting, conferences, food and beverage, all the different types of smaller functions which make up this particular system, sector in particular, would use this system because they want to be able to process, retrieve information, and then send out offers which are going to be relevant to the customer. So CRM systems are quite important because they help the sales marketing department, the business development department to maintain relationship with customers. It also allows for automation of sales related activities, things like sending out of invoices, quotes, keeps track of it that okay, this customer was offered this quotation or this price at this discount. We need to maintain that going forward. Otherwise, if it was paper waste, then you'll have to look through files to say, and the customer would say, and come back and say, okay, last time when I booked the hotel, you're giving me a 30% discount, but this time you're charging me full price. I don't understand the logic. So you'll have to look through the system and paperwork to find out last booking, okay, why it was discounted and stuff like that. But if you have this CRM in place, all this information can be retrieved at a click of a button with few clicks, and you then can maintain going forward these offers, to the customers, which allow you to bring in more business. So it is look at, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, so the example you gave before about demographics and how they would target somebody on their income, their age, and their social status, let's say, would be a use of the customer, the CRM system.
Yes, absolutely. Will be actually fed into the CRM system. And I'll show you one example of it. We use one CRM, and that's called Hubspot. Now, that is a customer relationship management system for us. So it allows us to track pretty much everything, send out offers, newsletters, and this is a system that maybe we use within the educational, industry. And the idea there is we want to find out what kind of systems can be, what kind of customers are coming in, what they're looking at, how they're browsing, and it allows us to look at generating reports, sales code. We do a lot of marketing with it. We can track a lot of things, and this kind of a system allows us to do all this. And this is a system which is called, customer relationship management system.
Yeah.
So having looked at a number of different types of systems, what we can clearly say today is that without the use of these systems, it's very difficult for a large business within the tourism and hospitality sector to function. And some of these become the very core, meet the very core requirement of having them in place even before you start the business. Things like a property management system, things like a transaction processing system, whether it's the credit card machines or the wireless POS terminals, from examples of that to a booking software which allows you to book and manage the rooms and the property within a particular chain are requirements of having the management information system within the Now let's look at very briefly the second part of it, which is to understand global distribution systems. What are GDS? Any idea in terms of what are GDS? So if I say in the last couple of years, go ahead.
No, I'm not exactly sure. Please explain.
If I go back to what I explained in the first learning outcome was that when we see 20, 25 years back when there was no internet, every sort of, activity in this sector was done through the travel operator. You had to go and visit the travel agent. He would do the booking, provide you the brochure, things like that. Now, with connectivity happening, with travel becoming easier, cheaper, a lot of people are able to travel because of economic mobility, and also a lot of tourist destinations are getting added every year. What is happening is that in order to manage this, so if I look at just one hotel, and you think of now Hilton having 2,000 hotels or 6,000 properties across the globe, and they have to manage rooming, for example, in terms of selling those rooms or vacant rooms in that property to a global audience. So when we look at that, what we are looking at in a sense is expanding some of these systems which work within a particular place or an office or a hotel. And when we look at it from a global perspective, we are at some stage looking at globalizing the operation. And when you look at globalizing the operation, a hotel, for example, that we are talking about, say, for example, Hilton would have 6,600 properties. And in those 6,600 properties, they have in excess of 200,000 rooms. If they have to sell those rooms online through the travel operators, through different intermediaries, they will need to have some sort of a system in place which is able to collate all this information in real time, and that would be done through something called a global distribution system.
So it's a way for the hotels to sell the product globally through the
globally, yes. So this has different connotations. One is, if you have to sell these products globally, you will require a bigger system which will span and be able to take data input from a lot of different sites or operation sites that you have across the globe. The second is you will also have a lot of different types of intermediaries which will need to get access to this data and information in real time. So, for example, when you look at online websites, you have in the UK, for example, you look at some of the big sites like Money Supermarket, comparethemarket.com. What we do get to see is that these sites will typically, have a lot of information, being collated from different types of channels. And that information needs to be fed into a system which will then allow it to be seen in real-time basis by a lot of different other people who have access to the system. So a simple system here would be what I'm trying to refer is, if you're trying to book a room, going back to the same example, and if I say if you're trying to book a room in a particular location and that room and that property is being looked at at any given particular time, if I look at certain sites, when you look at bookings.com, you try and book a place, it is showing you in real time how many people are actually looking at booking this property. So in London, it is talking that there are 15,000 odd properties available for you to book. The moment I say show prices for this, you will primarily see that, okay, it is going to ask me some dates. When I look at some check-in dates and check-out dates, at some stage, it will show me that there are so many people looking at this site or looking at booking this room. So book 3 times for your date in the last 6 hours and only 2 sites. So this is showing information in real time. Now,
excuse me. So these sites like Booking and all these booking sites are they have the real-time access. They're intermediaries that have real-time access to the global distribution system.
That's correct. So what will happen is, if you're trying to book this place right now, and if I land up or have some queries or land up into a bit of problems saying that I'm not able to do this or I'm not able to do that, what you'll be able to do is pick up the phone and speak to the person directly at the hotel. So some part of your booking would happen online, but the completion of that transaction will happen by speaking to the operator at some stage. And that will give you an example of how a system would be managed when we look at some sort of, not just a particular city, particular property, but this is looking at a number of properties or thousands of properties in a particular location or a destination. And that would be some sort of a big system in the background. And that will be an example of something called the, GDS.
Yeah.
Now, why do you think GDS is required? GDS is required because you have a number of people who rely on this system to be able to sell, buy, book rooms in real time. And they will be different types of, people utilizing it all together at one go. So when I say distribution, it straight away comes to my mind that when I look at distribution, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try and sell my products and services through different channels. So if I look at an example of a retailer, today you see a lot of retailers like Tesco, Sainsbury, Carrefour, they try and sell products through the store, but they also sell it online. But they also are looking at selling it through intermediary options like on Amazon or, on eBay, on some of the other big stores which are able to give access to different types of consumers.
Exactly.
So they go to market. In terms of their go-to-market strategy, they use multiple channels to be able to reach out to customers. Similarly, when you look at the tourism sector, there is no way that a hotel chain or an airline would be able to book and sell all the seats by just going to the customer directly. They will have to look at a lot of intermediaries or different channels through which they market their product.
Yeah.
And when you look at these different types of intermediaries all selling the same products and services and getting information in real time, they will need to be hooked into something called a global distribution system. Right. Is that okay? Yeah. So the simple understanding in this is that because of the advent of technology, what has happened is that it has also opened up the avenues of selling products and services to different channels, whether it's websites, aggregator websites, third-party portals, your own company direct website, which is the Marriott Hotel website. Now, an example here in the booking.com would be that Marlin Algate Tower Hotel has its own website as well. But why do you think it has the need to advertise on bookings.com or secretescapes.com on different type of websites? Because they do not know where the customer is going to come from. And today they are looking at reaching out to customers from different avenues and from different channels. So in this case, they all are going to be hooked into backend onto one central system of the organization, which will provide rooming or availability of room bookings for this hotel. And that would be required because there are a lot of different types of intermediaries which are trying to sell the same rooms to different type of customers. And for that to happen in real time, that they all need to be hooked into something called a live system, and that would be a GDS. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So this will allow them to look at data offline, somebody who's booking the room at the front desk, but also in real time when people are browsing the property across from maybe tens of different types of different portals to be able to book this. Now, when I say GDS would have intermediaries. That intermediaries would mean things like travel agencies, operators like Virgin, for example, Thomas Cook. You look at TUI, they do not just sell you a property, they sell you a holiday. So when they sell you a holiday, they're selling you the airline ticket, they're selling you the hotel, they're selling you the activities that you will do in your vacation, and they will also sell you things like car rentals, car hires, and some of the other things. Now, when you look at a plethora of things being sold to you, that will require something called a system which will integrate all different types of offers and different type of facilities which are available, and that will also involve something called a GDS.
GDS.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
An example of GDS would be the travel, airlines booking system. An example of GDS would be a complex website like Money Supermarket. An example of GDS would be a very complex travel site which allows you to compare different offers. So when you look at Kayak, for example, today when you look at booking cheaper flights or you want to find cheaper flights, you go across to a comparison website. And a comparison website is an example of global distribution system. Okay. Because it is able to pull in information from, say, 200 different airlines at different destinations and give you all that information as a snapshot in one particular page. Is that okay?
Yeah.
If you look at Kayak, for example, you can search flights, hotels, cars, and you can pretty much book everything, in one location by comparison as well, by comparing different sites and different offers. Now, this is an example of an online global distribution system. So a lot of hotels, a lot of flight operators, tour operators have put in their products and services, and it allows them to be sold to an audience globally, manage it on real time in terms of bookings, and customers are able to compare data, offers, discounts in real time in one particular location. Is an example of a global distribution system. Okay. Now let's go to the third part. In terms of what we want to look at is what is the role of online travel agencies and how does marketing now take place using some of these GDS sites or sites which provide integrated services to customers. So OTA stands for online travel agencies. Okay, so what would be an example of online travel agency? So when I look at, say, Thomas Cook,
yes,
when I look at TUI, these are what are called online travel agencies. They can help you book everything in one location, whether it's to do with hotels, cars.
A whole package, pretty much.
Whole package, yes. So with the rise of OTAs, which has happened because of the availability of internet and the ability of the companies to be able to list all the information on websites, what has happened is they've become quite popular with the customers because what it allows the customers to do, and to a certain extent, companies to do is go direct to customer, D2C. And they want to put out these offers, and in some cases they work in opposite angles to what the GDS does. They try to reach out to customers directly by cutting out the intermediaries so that their profit margins could be increased. So OTAs have become quite popular, and you will see that the medium through which they reach out to customers would be primarily through the internet and from the website. Now, most popular OTAs tend to be things like Booking.com, Expedia, your Hostel World, different types which are in different countries, but some of them have become global players. And when we look at Expedia, Booking.com, they are pretty much, global players in this particular sector. So it allows customers to do pretty much all the activities, as you mentioned rightly, booking a vacation, booking a full package in one location, in one website is possible. Now, within this particular stuff, we look at the importance of what is called the meta search engines. Now, meta search engines are becoming important because there are so many websites now, billions of websites. How do you get your website to be found much quicker and rank on, say for example, have a top ranking when somebody is looking for, say, destination. So if I do a quick search now, if I go on to Google and if I say holidays to New York, just as an example, there are so many sites which come up. Now, how does one site stand out from the other? So what is going to happen is that a lot of companies are now investing into what is called search engine optimization, or things which are going to allow them to stand out from some of the others which are also advertising the same offers. So here we look at the options of what is called the meta search engines, wherein they would take into account the data which customer thinks are going to be more important when they do the search. So if I look at certain keywords, these keywords, when I look at typing holiday just as a keyword, but I don't write anything. Now, holiday as a keyword might come up millions of times or even billions of times on the internet. But how does why does Thomas Cook come up as #1 search? Is because they are sponsoring an advert, and holiday seems to be a word which is integrated into their headline. So you will see all the search which Google has brought out at some stage and somewhere in the sentence will have the word holiday in it. Last minute holiday offers, holiday, inclusive holidays, holidays to anywhere, cheap flights and holidays. You see, this word is the key search word which is coming up in what I've tried to put in as a search on Google. Now, this is where the importance of search is becoming when we look at online travel agencies. So they continuously have to look at refining and also looking at picking up the right choice of words which the customers are going to look for when they try and look for holidays or decide to book a holiday.
When they search.
So this is something which is called meta search, and this meta search leads into activities, things like pay-per-click model and CPA cost-per-click model. So slight bit going into marketing. And the reason why it is going into marketing is because when we look at the concept of online travel agencies, the entire business model is based on websites. The entire business model is based online. They are looking at creating very extensive websites, and these websites are supposed to be able to generate inquiries or, inquiries which the customers, inquiries which they are able to then look at to be able to attract and bring in customers to book the hotels. So even when we look at, the online travel agencies, there are loads of them. And when we look at loads of them, they have come up with the concept of, looking at keywords, search engine optimization, cost per click, pay-per-click models, which are advertising mediums. They are spending a bit more money to be found much more easily, come up on the top rankings of the search so that customers look at them first as against their competition. And this concept is something called meta search. Now, how are these determined? A slight bit in terms of when I go to the example of bookings.com. And if I look at bookings.com, what it allows me to do is, because it's an aggregator website, it pulls in information from a lot of different properties and a lot of different places. It allows me to do search within the website itself.
Yes.
Right? A simple example of this would be if I go to, say, UK Versity. Now, if you're after a particular course, just as an example, and if you're after that particular course, what tends to happen is you want to look at doing a quick search. You don't want to go through the website and look at a bit of time and all that. So what will happen here is you click on the search option, and within the search option you get a search bar and you search something that you want to search, say tourism. And when you do that search, so what this site or the engine is allowing within the site to do is bring you on the keyword which is tourism, anything which is published on the website with the word tourism. Yes. So different courses with tourism come up. Now this is something called meta search. That means you're doing a search within the site to be able to come across to some pieces of information which is going to be important for you to make a decision. So sometimes search results are determined by the use of keywords, and that will classify it into something called, meta search. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, what I've done in some of the slides is I've made some speaker notes, which will allow you to understand some of these concepts, because this bit of the assessment criteria 2.3 focuses on a bit of marketing related terminology, which we'll cover in the marketing unit as well. But it will give you some context and relevance to understand what is, why this is required and how companies or operators which are online travel agencies now are looking at differentiating themselves by looking at keyword search, pay-per-click advertising, things like what you call sponsored adverts to stand out, because there are loads and loads of other customers which are also advertising similar products and services online.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, any questions on this so far?
No.
Okay. So
anything I asked was.
That's fine. So what I'll do is on the when you go onto the learner management system, I think on this what I've done is I've created a bit of a handout for you as well, and that handout is named as Learning Outcome 2 handout.
Okay.
And that will allow you to study. There are two in particular. There is one which is an extract from a particular I would say book, which will basically allow you to study the details of global distribution systems. Okay, and this is a bit of an extract which allows you to build a bit of theory of what we've discussed during some of the slides. The other one, it talks about a report, which is a fairly recent report, which talks about the state of distribution and meta search within the industry. So this is going to give you a bit of insight into understanding how the search side of things is becoming quite important within the sector, because as more and more businesses advertise online and they try to reach out to customers directly by differentiating their products and services, you need to understand. If you want to get into details, you want to understand certain concepts, and that will allow you to understand these concepts by looking at this particular report.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Good stuff. So I'll catch up with you next week, and
yes.
I'll send you the copy of the presentation is already on Moodle, but I'll send you a copy of the recording.
Okay.
In a couple of minutes as it's available, and then I'll catch up with you next week, which is primarily going to be on Wednesday.
I'll let you know. To be.
Okay. We've done some bit of alignment in any. Yeah, if you're not able to make it, then let me know.
Because my schedule changes every week. That's why.
That's fine. I understand.
Okay.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you, Raman. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have any questions or think of any questions, do feel free to get back to me, and you drop me an email. I'll come back to you